So you might have just purchased a drop spindle or been given one as a gift, and you've got some drop spindle, you've got a fiber, and you are a longtime knitter or crocheter or weaver, and you'd like to learn how to spin. In this episode of the Thoughtfully Made Fiber Vlogcast, we're going to go over some of the basics of what it means to spin. We'll start out by discussing some of the drop spindles available to us on the market, and we'll also go over how fiber becomes yarn by adding twist. We'll go over some of the basic wool and fiber breeds that I think are really enjoyable, some of the pitfalls of learning how to spin on a drop spindle. I myself learned how to spin on a student drop spindle about 6 years ago now, and I think I'm still fresh enough from learning it to remember the difficulties and kind of like the common errors, but far enough away that I know how to fix those errors now. So I hope that with those 6 years of experience of spinning, I can be helpful to you in learning how to spin yourself. In addition to these basic concepts and ideas, we'll also be going over how to use a drop spindle just like this one and take your fiber from fiber into a single ply yarn. If you find this video helpful and you'd like to see more, I will be making more videos in the future on how to ply and how to wet finish your yarn. So in this video, I'll be starting with types of drop spindles and how I think you should shop for them as a beginner. If you'd like to jump on though to how to do the thing, I have separated everything into sections in this video, and I will put timestamps in the comments below so that you can jump around as you need and bookmark and reference the parts that you want to as you go along. As long as there have been humans who have made tools, we have made yarn out of some fiber and some sticks. Today, there is a vast and wide variety of spindles on the market today. We broadly categorize them into two styles of spindles. One is drop spindle, where the spindle and the yarn is suspended in the midair, and the other type is supported spindle, where the spindle never leaves a supportive surface, such as a bowl in your lap or just a flat tabletop. These types of spindles have been developing for thousands of years, and many regions of the world have their own unique take on it. While there's a huge variety of spindles, drop and supported, available on the market, and so many varieties from different traditions and different cultures of the world, today I will be covering two of the most popular styles available in the North American market. The vast majority of drop spindle spinning that I see practiced in my particular social circles and in groups across America are top whorl spindles that look like this. They are called top whorl because this weighted part is at the top. And also rising in popularity, I think, are Turkish spindles. They've been popular and around for a really long time, but I'm really seeing them explode in popularity and get even more popular than they already were before. A Turkish spindle is characterized by these crossed arms and a central removable spindle shaft. It shifts around depending on what you need it to do at this moment. It's a delightful way to spin. We will mostly be going over the drop spindle style with the top whorl today, but I'll briefly cover how things are done on the Turkish as well. So I have here two top whorl drop spindles, each with a hook on top, and these are vastly different styles and sizes. They may both look very similar, but they have very different function in my experience. So this one is the single size drop spindle that comes in just this one size, this huge size here. It is by Kromski, which is a Polish company that makes spinning wheels as well as rigid heddle looms. I am a dealer for Kromski, and I recently added these to my shop. I am quite preferential to the size of these because I find that the whorl is not too thick, but it is very wide, which gives you a lot of room to store yarn below so that you could spin and spin and spin and not have to worry about winding off for quite a while. It is also a good weight. You do not want to start with an itty bitty spindle like this. So this one is an itty bitty drop spindle that hopefully I'll bring more styles like this into the shop soon, but this one weighs just 25 grams, while this one weighs 75 grams. When you're first starting out, you will want a spindle that weighs more than less. I would say you want at least 30 grams, in my opinion, this is at the top of the range of where I would be, 75 grams. And this is because when you're first starting out, you want a long and stable spin, and you don't want it to abruptly stop, and the momentum of the spin causes you to spin the other way, which untwists your yarn, and then you're going to lose your yarn and you're going to drop your spindle. So that is my first tip for beginners shopping for drop spindles. You want one with a decent whorl size so that you can hold lots of yarn under it. And you want one that's fairly heavy, from, I would say, 30 to 75 grams. So the Kromski that I carry is on the upper end of the scale, and pretty soon I will also have the Turkish spindles in a range of sizes and weights in the shop so that you can purchase a few and see which one takes. Everybody learns so differently, and for example, while I took pretty easily to drop spindle spinning when I first started out, many of my friends did not, but they did take to Turkish spindle spindling, so you may have to try a few before you can figure out which ones you want. Luckily, the handmade ones, such as the Turkish spindles I have here and the little itty bitty drop spindle that I have, those have amazing resale value if they're made by individual makers. So you can purchase one used and then sell it used if you don't take to it, and that's perfectly okay. So if you have been on the internet and you're here looking for drop spindle tutorials, you have probably seen beautiful braids of fiber just like this. This is a partial braid of comb top, which has been commercially prepared, and that just means that on a commercial scale, this fiber has been shorn from the sheep, then it has been washed and picked, then it has been carded to fluff it up, and finally combed to get it perfectly parallel and aligned. Now, in commercial prepped fibers, sometimes you won't get like a perfectly aligned situation, and there are some brands that I would warn you to stay away from, specifically Malabrigo. Malabrigo's hand-dyed fiber is one that is quite affordable, and many beginners tend to reach for it, but I am here to tell you that is the worst possible fiber to start with, as it is famous for being felted during the dyeing stage. So one of the caveats of purchasing beautiful hand-dyed commercial comb top like this is that you will really want to buy from someone very reputable. You will want to buy it from somebody who knows what they're doing. And I have tested many different comb tops to carry in my shop, and quite a few makers partially felt their fiber. And I only carry the ones that I find are delightful to spin, and this is one of them. So what you're looking for is fiber that pulls apart easily, just like that. And as you pull it apart more and more, you'll find that fiber has what we call a staple length. A staple length is just the length of a single strand of the sheep's wool. So this one I would say is 5 to 6 inches. So this one is a length of this hand-dyed BFL fiber. This one is quite popular and recommended by many spinners for beginners, including myself. This one also has a blend of some silk in it. So BFL is advantageous because of its longer staple length. Longer staple length means you have a little more room to draft and maneuver, and that it won't drift apart as easily as its shorter fiber cousins. You will often see comb top marketed by dyers and retailers as roving, and that is a big pet peeve of mine. Roving is a preparation where the fiber has only been carded and not combed. When you see perfectly parallel and aligned fibers like this, we're really looking at a comb top preparation, which does make a difference. And here is another example of comb top that I myself combed on home combs and processed from raw. You can see that home combed tops have a slight difference from commercially dyed tops. And this is because it has a little bit more spring and life left in it. You can see how bouncy and crimpy that this top is. And it is a delight to spin from. And as you progress in your spinning, you might find that you enjoy some over another. I myself love both. I love hand-dyed commercial home comb tops, and lately I'm really enjoying this home-prepared comb top as well. So another format that is a little bit less easy to find, but very popular, and you may have seen these on the internet, is these bats. Just like comb tops, bats also come in a range of preparations. So this one was made by Inglenook Fibers, and it has been carded on a drum carder, an electric drum carder, and it looks to me like it was made from a combination of fleece, sari silk, bamboo, and also some comb top. So you can revive comb top and bring it into this kind of fluffy, woolen, carded look for a more woolen preparation. So there's a huge range of different fiber preparations that you can do to get the fiber to perform in a more woolen spun style or in a more worsted spun style. Comb tops are associated with a worsted prep, in which you get a much smoother and denser spin, and bats like this, or roving or rolegs, are associated with a woolen spin technique in which lots of twist is let into the fiber supply as we spin. more on this soon. A woolen style prep and a woolen style spinning technique will create a much more lofty and airy and lightweight and insulating yarn. But on the other hand, a worsted spun yarn is going to be stronger and more hard wearing for things like socks and mittens. In my opinion, to start drop spinning, you will need a minimum of 1 drop spindle and some fiber to work with. I recommend at least 2 ounces. So in my shop, we carry a kit that has this Kromski spindle, a 4-ounce bump of comb top. This is Polish merino, which Kromski makes because everything by Kromski is made in Poland, so they're associated with the Polish merino. And this kit also comes with a tiny niddy noddy, which you will need to finish your yarn. However, we will not be getting to this part today, so let's just get started with comb top and spindling. So my assistant and friend Symphony is starting to learn to spin, and I'm saving this entire 4 ounce of comb top for her. So I'm going to save this for her, and I'm going to be spinning from this partial braid of BFL and silk blend that's also available in my shop. Earlier in this video, you saw me pull apart a staple length from the main braid of the fiber, and now I'm going to go over how to make a leader yarn. Now, if you already have yarn, you could literally tie it to the shaft part below the whorl and get started. But I find it very satisfying to make my own leader yarn. So in this video, I will demonstrate how to make your own leader yarn. So let's take a look at the anatomy of the drop spindle. You have the stick in the middle, which is called the shaft. And this is what we will use to create the spin and create the twist, as well as store the cop. The cop is just a fancy word for the bits of finished singles or plied yarn that we're storing on the shaft. And on the top of the spindle, you have a whorl, which helps weight and balance the spindle, and a hook from which your yarn and fiber will suspend. So without further ado, let's jump into how I make my leader yarn using a drop spindle like this. So I take a single staple length of my fiber. And remember, staple length just means the lock of the sheep, like a single length of it without the overlap, because in the comb top preparation, you have a bunch of them overlapping. You just want to pull out a little bit so you can work with it. So taking a staple length of fiber, I will take out just a little bit of it. And from the middle of the staple length, I will hook my hook onto it. So now I've pulled out a tiny bit of the fiber. Oh, I lost it here. Put it back onto the hook. So now I've pulled out a little tiny bit of the fiber to work with. And I'm going to be spinning clockwise, which is this way. So turning toward me to the right. And by holding the staple length, I can twist, twist, twist. And now I have a little bit of yarn. So as you can see, yarn is made when the fiber is twisted and that kinetic energy is stored. And if I let go, it will just untwist itself. So a big part of spinning is just securing the twist in your fiber and keeping it stable so that it's workable for your weaving or your knitting. So let's do this again. I'm going to pull out this part that I already demonstrated on, drop it on the floor and make a big mess. So we have a staple length, and I'm just separating out a little tiny bit of it right in the middle of the length. Notice how I'm using my other fingers to kind of hold the fiber. You'll probably see me do this a lot. I handle my fiber like this all the time, whether I'm processing or spinning. This is kind of like a pretty default move for me. So I've grabbed onto the middle of the staple length of a handful of fibers. I don't know, like 20 strands. And I fold it over. And now I have a little half staple length of fiber folded over. And I start out by spinning to my right clockwise. And once I have enough twist, the yarn will suspend itself from this hook and have enough strength. Now, an important part of spinning is knowing your spindle weight and how it can handle your yarn weight. On a big, thick spindle like this, it's suitable for beginners because it will spin more stably. So on a spindle like this, you will want to be spinning at least a fingering weight single, probably DK weight. Applied together, this will become worsted to Aran weight. And this is because you will need a really strong, really thick single to hold up the weight of your spindle so that you have an easier time. This is also good for beginners because it's quite difficult to draft very fine when you're just starting out, because as you draft, you will need to keep up with the twist and how fast it's entering the fiber. So what is drafting? Drafting is simply the part I did earlier where I pull out a bit of fiber. And as you can see here, there's a zone in the fiber called the drafting triangle where the fiber becomes yarn. And then after that, it's twisted and it's become a single. So drafting is just the action of pulling yarn from the fiber supply, at which point twist will enter it and make it into yarn. And now I've lost the tip of my yarn and I will need to do it again. Let me retwist this bit and then we'll get onto the spinning. So I will just twist, twist, twist without dropping my spindle until I have enough structural integrity here so that I can drop the spindle. I think I have enough twist now, and you can see the twist in the fiber and how it's a strong and compacted yarn. So now I will drop the spindle. I'm going to wrap this bit of fiber around my hand just so it's out of the way. I'm going to drop the spindle and flick it to my right. And I'm going to let a bunch of twist enter into this fiber. Spinning is a two-part activity. You are making twist and allowing it to enter the fiber, and at the same time, you're drafting out the fiber to a manageable circumference so that you can make yarn rather than just a twisted handful of fiber. However, for beginners, it can be quite difficult to manage this action of both drafting and spinning at the same time. So for beginners, I highly recommend that we break up this action, and I'll show you that in a moment. But first, let's start our cup. So as you can see, I've made a good length here, and you can just do this by twisting without dropping your spindle, like forever. So once you have a good bit, you're going to just make a figure 8 with 2 of your fingers. I'm using my middle finger and my thumb. And I'm just going to use these fingers to kind of make a figure 8 and just to hold my yarn for a bit. So now that I have my yarn secured on my fingers and I have my leader attached to the hook, it's time to detach the leader and attach it to the spindle shaft so that we can start our little cup. So I've unhooked the leader yarn while still holding onto it because you don't want to let go of that twist and let it untwist. And I'm just going to start wrapping it around the shaft of my spindle a couple times. You can see that I've wrapped it just a few times around. And once you start wrapping, you'll want to continue to wrap the exact same way. I'm going to just wrap over itself to secure it a few times quite firmly while letting go of what's in my other hand. And it's that firm wrapping around itself that allows it to stay secure. And once I have like this much, like the length of my face left, I'm going to find my notch on the edge of my whorl. So not all spindles historically have a notch, but most of them do today for the top whorl style. So you can see there's a notch here. That just helps us secure our single yarn without slippage. So I'm gonna pass it through my notch here and hook it back onto the hook. So now I'm gonna spin the remainder of my staple length of fiber and demonstrate how I recommend that beginners split up the action between spinning and drafting. Now, if you're like me and you already ran out of fiber, you're gonna want to grab a little bit more fiber like this and join it. And to join yarn, all you need to do is leave the end of your spun yarn fuzzy and open without being spun. And then you'll add a bunch of twist while pinching off the twist halfway in between so that the end remains untwist. You're going to save all this twist on your single because kinetic energy of the twist will travel down the yarn when you unpinch it. And I'm going to bring you down here so you can see. So I'm going to hold the spindle in my lap like this. So I recommend you learn sitting down because I'm going to hold the spindle in my lap between my legs. I'm still pinching off the twist and letting the end be wispy. I'm going to draft out a little bit of my new fiber supply and just overlap. Now you're a beginner, so don't worry about consistency or keeping it the same thickness throughout. Just don't worry about that for now. So you are going to pinch the overlapped section, keeping both sections between your fingers. And because you let the spindle spin freely for ages earlier, you have enough structural integrity to support this. And then you're just gonna flick it and let it spin. And let the twist enter this joint part. Now this joint part is gonna be weak for a while. So you'll want extra twist anytime you join in a new bit of fiber. I'm gonna just put a bunch of extra twist on, and then I'll show you how to wind on. So anytime you want to wind on, whether it is because the yarn is getting too long to manage, or because you've just joined yarn and you want to put away kind of the weak part with the twist stored on it to secure it, all you do is unhook it from both the hook and the notch while still pinching off the twist, and you wrap it neatly as you can. My first one was a mess, so don't worry about that now. Around it until you have like at least 6 inches. So you want 6 inches from the notch at least. So now let's go over how we're going to separate the act of adding twist and drafting your fiber at the same time. So to separate these, we're going to spin our spindle and add twist while pinching off the twist at the point where it becomes fiber like this. And we're just going to add a ton of twist without drafting. And this will allow us to store up all that twist. You can do it by flicking just like that and in a moment, or you can do it by rolling it on your thigh towards yourself like that. Now I have like way too much twist in here, so let me just let go of some of it. Ugh. When you have super over twisted yarn, you can do this, but it's not for the faint of heart, because if you overdo it, it'll just fall apart. All right, this is enough, I think. So I have a good bit of twist stored up here in this section of the working section. So I'm gonna pinch off with my other hand. I've transferred it, you see, from one hand to the other. And now I'm gonna do the park and draft maneuver. Oh, I lost my hook here. You don't have to have your hook for this part, but I like to. So now you're gonna draft your yarn open, or your fiber open, into a thinner sliver. Oh, now I lost some, see? Now I lost some. I'm gonna overlap. And now I'm just gonna let that twist through, you see? Twist travels up into this fiber and it becomes yarn. And then I'm gonna do it again. I flicked it and let it spin kind of slow. Entered lots of twist entering this bit, keeping your fiber out of the way. Actually, the effort required for me to demonstrate this while talking probably means I'll create a similar yarn to you. Kind of lumpy, because it's kind of hard to focus on spinning while I'm talking. I'm just going to keep repeating this process. I'm going to spin, and I'm going to park it, and then I'm going to draft it. Spin. And always spin only when you have enough structural integrity left inside this part. Now I'm going to draft. Now, say you went too far and now your yarn won't hold. What do you do then? So, say you're here, you have this much yarn, you added some twist, you parked it, and now you're drafting, but now it's drifting apart because it's not strong enough. It's a lot easier to add twist to a small section than to a large section. So if that happens, I just butterfly myself here until I'm way close to the hook. And now I can add a little bit of twist without letting go of the spindle. And now I have enough structural integrity to let go in just a small 2 inches of yarn and add a lot of twist. And now I can let through. You see the motion where I slowly eased it in and let that twist through this long drafted out bit that was weak before, but now it's strong. And I shall do this a few more times just to demonstrate. I'm letting a lot of twist into the spin. And when you're a beginner, yes, it's gonna wobble like that. Now I have stored some twist in this length between the hook and my fingers, and I'm gonna pull back the fiber and let the twist through. Park it and draft. So this technique is called the park and draft. And I think I park and drafted my first way through my first 2 ounces of fiber ever. Okay, now it's getting too long for you to see, but if you're standing, you can actually go for quite a while. I'm going to spin, then I'm going to park it and pull back until I have yarn that's not over twisted. Then I'm going to spin. I'm going to catch my spindle, put it between my legs and park it, and then draft back, just like that. Then when I've drafted as far back as I can comfortably or lazily spin, I will roll up some of it onto my cup firmly. Yeah, it's very important that your cup isn't too loose. And eventually, as you practice more and more, you'll be able to draft at the same time as the spindle is spinning. And because I have a big spindle here, it keeps going for quite a while. And at first, your yarn is going to be like this, lumpy and bumpy, and that is okay. That is our practice yarn. And in fact, this is already neater than my first actual yarn. You can see how it gets kind of thin here and kind of thick here. The other thing you need to know is that a thin bit of fiber will need a lot more twist to hold it together because it's more likely to drift apart, and a thicker section will need less twist to hold it together, less rotations. That's another reason why you should try to start kind of thick. So here you can see a view of me drafting. So right now we're practicing a worsted style spin where I hold the twist, I pinch the twist off, and then I slide it across the fiber, smoothing it out and letting the twist in gradually. The twist does not enter my fiber supply because I'm not letting it through. I'm pinching it off, and that creates a more compacted style of spinning and smooth. And the smoother the yarn, the less likely friction is to jostle the fibers apart. And that's great if you're making socks. But I am not often spinning for socks. So I very rarely do this type of spinning. But I find it really enjoyable on a spindle, on a drop spindle like this, in a way that I don't find enjoyable on my wheel. And perhaps you'll be like me and you will move on from this point and enjoy spinning on a wheel for ages. But I regret not exploring drop spindle further because I'm really enjoying it lately. I exclusively drop spindle for 2 years, and then I moved onto a wheel and never looked back. I'm going to demonstrate on this big old spindle a few more times, and then we'll move on to a different spindle. And of course, you can always scrub back in the video to watch the part where I park and draft over and over again. And of course, remember this zone between the fingers where the twist enters the fiber. This is called the drafting zone with the drafting triangle. And if you keep the amount of fiber that you draft and the length between your hands consistent, you will get a more consistent yarn. So notice how I try to draft out the same amount of fiber. Oh my gosh. Now, of course, I'm not doing it because I'm talking. And I'm trying to draw out the same amount of fiber each time and drawing back the same length. And you never want this to be longer than your staple length because your yarn will drift apart. Here are a few other things. You should not buy an expensive spindle to start. So this kit is like $65. It includes all that stuff, but the value of the spindle itself is only like $25 or $30, I think. Don't pay more than that for a spindle, please. You will drop it so many times. And once you get faster and you get more confident at spinning, you will be flicking this thing so fast. And then it will drift on you and your yarn will fall apart on you. and it will fly across the room, possibly injuring animals and small children. So practice when you're alone. And I dropped my first spindle so much, and it landed on its hook so often that it broke pretty soon, like within a month or two of me purchasing it. I was practicing a lot and dropping it a lot. So don't spend too much on your first spindle unless you have that much money to lose, which I don't. But if you do, more power to you. Okay, so those are the basics of making a singles yarn on a drop spindle. What do you think? I am not doing the best demonstration. I really do like a quiet one. Now, if you've started with a Turkish spindle, you will also need to know how you're going to attach your yarn. When I'm about to take a break and I'm taking a pause and walking away, all I do is roll up the yarn until I have just, like, I don't know, a foot left, find the notch, and then wrap my yarn around the hook a couple times to secure the twist. And now it's ready for storage. So real quick, we'll go over how to attach your yarn and start your leader if you're using a Turkish spindle instead. Turkish spindles come already disassembled like this, and you're gonna slide the skinnier one cross arm through the thicker cross arm, making a cross. Then you will put your spindle shaft through it, thick side down, and that is how you have a spindle. Once again, you will put your skinnier cross arm into your thicker cross arm until the holes in the middle of them align. Then you will pop your shaft through the arms. Let's make a leader yarn. So once again, I am using the same fiber that I was before, BF out in silk, and I've grabbed a staple length. Now this time I'm going to separate out just a little bit of fiber here. I'm gonna hook, and on a Turkish spindle, you will find that it has this ridge or sometimes a notch at the end, at the tip, so that it can hold on to your fiber. So I'm gonna push this tip through the fiber, and then I'm just gonna turn to the right, same way as before, until I have a bit of yarn. And you're gonna want to hold on to this fiber onto the shaft because it's gonna want to run away since it's not on hook. And another thing you can do, and this is gross, is dampen. I just did it with a little bit of spit. Dampen the part where you want your fiber to sit so that it can hold on to it. And you're gonna keep drafting out and twisting. And this is a little bit harder to start on a Turkish spindle, in my opinion, but it's well worth it. You're gonna keep doing that until you have enough for a half hitch knot. And then once you have enough for a half hitch knot, you're gonna take your little spiral off. You are going to wrap your yarn across the shaft like this a few times to start securing it. Then you're gonna, with your thumb, make a loop, just like a backwards loop cast on, and then you're gonna tighten it just under the part where there's like a bump so that you can secure it. And now you are ready to spin or to park and draft. I'm really enjoying the Turkish spindle lately. They come in a variety of sizes. It can be quite affordable. And I really enjoy how stable and long they spin for me. Winding a cop on a Turkish spindle is a little bit different, so let me figure eight some of my yarn and I will show you. I'm showing you both of these techniques, both of these spindles in the same video because I really believe the principle is the same. And you should learn these ideas, whether it is on a Turkish spindle or a top whorl drop spindle. So I have butterflied like all of this yarn onto my finger. I've held on to the twist. And I like to start the end of my yarn below the shaft so it's out of my way while I wrap. I wrap it a couple times around the bottom and there's like a little ridge here for it. And then what I do is come up above the cross I'm going to go across, over and across 2 arms, under 1 arm, and then I'm going to repeat that. Over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1. This will get easier as it fills. You want to hold it steady, and you don't want to hold it by the arms because your shaft is going to fall out. Ask me how I know. So I don't claim to be an expert at Turkish spindling because sadly I became like one of those wheel only spinners, and I never explored Turkish spindling until recently. And I regret that because it's really fun. All right, I have wound off like a good amount. You can see a good amount of my yarn like this. And with like at least 8 inches, I would say, left, I'm going to wrap it around my shaft to give it some security. And with my thumb, make a little half hitch knot. And off we go. Ooh. Didn't leave enough space there, you can see. And you're going to make a lumpy yarn. So lumpy. It's going to be a huge pain. You're going to be so frustrated and drop your spindle so many times. And anytime I take an extended break from spindling, when I come back, I also drop the spindle a ton. Now you'll just continue repeating this process on either your top whorl drop spindle or your Turkish spindle. And I will tell you that the most annoying part of drop spindling, full honesty here, is the winding. You are just winding yarn from now until eternity. But I find one of the reasons I'm really enjoying Turkish spindle is that, first of all, it creates a super satisfying shape. The thing that forms, like the ball of yarn that forms, we call it a turtle because it kind of looks like one, and I'll show you one in a minute. Oh my gosh, where am I? Over 2, under 1. Over 2, under 1. There you go. All right, let me securely store this real quick, and I'll show you how I spin my little one. So here is the hand-prepared comb top that I've been working from. And just like the other one, I stored it by putting the half hitch on, and then I just left it, and I flick. So I don't have a good time with a Turkish spindle when I roll it against my leg like I do with my top whorl, so I just flick like that. And you can see on this smaller spindle, this one's just 17 grams, I can get real thin. And now let me show you how I wind so you can see this more filled turtle that I have here on here. Sometimes I have trouble getting the half hitch off the tip, and that is okay. Actually, I don't usually have this much trouble. The first few times was like this, and this is the first time in a while I've been having this trouble. Okay, where was I? Now I'm going to find the place where I ended my winding before. You can see I just did it under here. Then I do over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1. And earlier, I was working pretty close to the shaft. And as I built my little turtle, I lay each pathway of yarn outside of where I previously did, just next to it. Nice and tight. And eventually it becomes this cute little turtle shape. And basically as I layer, I go from the shaft out. And when I run out of space and I hit the cross arms, I just go back to the center and start again. And that is how you wind a turtle. And I will show you my embarrassing, not that great turtle that I just took off the spindle a few days ago. So the nice thing about the Turkish spindle is that you can use it direct from the spindle. Once you pull out the spindle, all you have to do is pull out the shaft and pull out the cross arms, and you're left with this little center pull ball, and you can apply straight from it. Now, I was an idiot and I lost the center to the sky, but that is okay. I am planning to apply from 2 of these anyway, so not a big deal. I wasn't really looking to secure it. but you can apply straight from this ball, and we'll go over that in a future video. So continue to practice and spin your bits of fiber, and soon you'll have a filled spindle. How do you know a spindle is full? Well, just yesterday I overfilled the spindle, and I will tell you how you will know. It will become obscenely, absurdly hard to spin. It will get so heavy that it'll spin for no time at all before it starts to unspin on you, and then it's very unpleasant. And that is when you know you have filled your spindle. Sometimes your spindle is done because you've spun up half your fiber and you're ready to clear it out so that you can spin your other half. And to wind it off, all you have to do is set it upside down in a mug, and I would wind it onto like a ping pong ball or a business card or a roll, like the center cardboard from a toilet paper roll, and wind it off neatly and firmly. I'll cover that in a future video, and you will be ready to spin your next single. The scope of this video is to just show you how we get that leader started and how we make twist, how to do the park and draft method. So I hope that this video gave you a perspective on how I started learning drop spindling. There are lots of really great creators out there and great resources for learning how to spin, and I just thought that I would add mine into the mix. I always found it helpful when I was learning to watch a lot of different people spin so that I can kind of get a feel for what will work for me. What works for me may not work for you, so I highly encourage that you watch lots of spinning creators and try out lots of different techniques and ways to spin, and continue persevering, and soon you will be happily spinning along, I promise. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. If you have any tips for beginners, please also leave a comment below, and I think that'll be really helpful for beginners watching this video, for more experienced spinners to comment their best tips below. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Thoughtfully Made Fiber Vlogcast. If you like this video and you'd like to see more about my spinning, knitting, designer, weaving, sewing life, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I try to post every other week, and I will hopefully see you back very soon. Thank you for watching.